be up in Ontario in late October. I'm sure the weather will be absolutely beautiful.
No, it's in Quebec. We're not going to Ontario.
Quebec.
We're going.
Did I say Ontario? I apologize.
You did.
It isn't.
Going...
It is in Quebec. I meant to
Brush
say
up on
Quebec.
your French.
That's quite the faux pas. See, throw a little. That's French, right? Faux pas is French.
They're going to meet you at the airport and turn you right back around.
Oh man, you got to edit that part out.
Hey everyone, welcome back to DirectConnect. Today I'm joined by Leonard Chamberlin and Steve Parker. How you gentlemen doing?
Good afternoon.
Everyone survived Labor Day. No safety incidents to speak of. No reportable incidents on the cyber front.
No. All 10 fingers.
All right. Leonard's conspicuously keeping his hands down, so we'll just note that for the listeners out there. Today we're going to talk a little bit about heading into Q3. I know for those who listened to one of our most recent On Target, Steve kind of talked about the shoulder season and how important that is for the industry. And I think that goes throughout most of the utilities, whether you're in compliance, security, or you're actually on the operations side and really truly prepping for the winter. First thing up that's been in the headlines for the last few winters, particularly for our friends down in Texas there, is that winter preparation. What kind of things are you guys seeing, or what should folks be doing to prep for kind of that winter weather as they're heading into that Q3 shoulder?
Well, it's still over 100 degrees here, Nick, so I don't think any of us are thinking about winter anytime soon.
Make sure we record that and play that back in January when Texas is frozen and out of power.
True. No, I mean, certainly it's a concern, but, I think people went a little overboard last year personally, prepping for it and stocking up on firewood. And, we didn't see the, outages like we had seen the year prior, even though we still managed to have a fairly significant ice storm, I believe back in February, or maybe it was January. It'll be interesting to see how this year goes, to what degree the new cold weather standards, have any impact.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's an El Nino year, so that should affect the climate a little bit. And hopefully, what was it, Leonard? A 100-year event or 1,000-year event you had down there in Texas? So theoretically, it shouldn't come around for a little while, at least.
Yeah, exactly.
I seem to remember doing an assessment for the AT&T Stadium there when they have the Super Bowl, and they told us it never snows there. And they couldn't get in the stadium because ice was slipping off the roof and blocking the door. I don't think that was 100 years ago. I'm not that old. Some white in the beard.
Yeah.
But I guess on the local side, kind of Leonard's pointed out, one of the things I'll be doing is we have above ground power lines and big trees, is getting the generator out, testing it, and cycling out the old fuel. Looking a little bit deeper into the winter, we got some new standards coming out in January. I know, Steve, that's one of the things you tend to focus on, is tracking what NERC and the drafting teams are up to. The SDTs, not the STDs.
Yeah, it's important to get the acronym correct. It's kind of unfortunate. We have SIP 4, SIP 4, and SIP 11 new versions go into effect in January. And I think they could sneak up on folks. On the surface, it doesn't appear that there's a significant difference in the wording. They were developed to help with the cloud, right? To allow for the storage of BCSI in the cloud and to better account or allow for the circumstance where encryption is used for protection. But there's a sneaky little word change. And I think many people haven't noticed it. I don't know if the auditors have noticed it, but the move away from a focus on designated storage locations and now protecting the confidentiality of BCSI itself has the potential, depending on how this is interpreted and applied by the regions, has the potential to move the standard from, again, focusing on the storage locations to really focusing on all of the information, regardless of where it's stored. That's potentially a pretty significant expansion in scope that I don't think was intended, but might end up being an unintended consequence of the wording change. We'll have to see how that plays out.
It's always interesting to see how those ones, they're kind of like the latent defects in some cases. I'm still waiting for the latest SIP 8 to come back and really blow up SIP 6 just with some of those connections. It just depends on when an auditor catches that and it becomes their new pet peeve, and all of a sudden it spreads across the ERO. So even if you don't see it in your January, February audits, keep an eye on that one. Have you seen anybody that started to move towards that adoption? Everyone I've talked to, nobody wants to be first.
I don't know if I can think of a specific example, but I know, I've dealt with a number of utilities that do have BCSI in the cloud. I've seen it come up in audits where they've kind of worked through and generally been successful applying the concepts that are going to be formalized in January. So I think those adopters are out there. I don't know if they're making a lot of noise publicly, but I think if you were to look at the organizations that were involved in the SAR and some of the heavily involved in the drafting of this, I think you might get some hints as to who some of those early adopters might be.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I agree with you, Steve. I think some of the wording will make for some interesting interpretations on the part of auditors to see how they kick the tires. And that always happens with when we get new requirements out of the SDT, right? But yeah, in addition to the storage locations, even overhauling how BCSI is identified in SIP 11, and what are the requirements around protecting it? It's no longer protecting and handling storage transit use. It's mitigate the risks of compromising the confidentiality. So potentially, a lot more than just updating the verbiage in your plans to reference the new requirements, right? There could be some significant impacts on the existing processes and what is inherently required.
So what kind of time frame would you guys recommend for somebody who's looking to make that transition January or so? When do they want to have those policies and that governance finalized?
6 months ago?
Yeah. Leonard, when was this standard approved? I don't think it was approved 6 months ago. I don't recall the date. The days run together, but certainly if you're not already working on it, you need to get busy. But as I said, I don't know that on the surface it's a really substantive change. And so for entities that aren't putting BCSI in the cloud, it should be status quo, at least until the auditors figure out that the different words actually say something different than what everybody thinks.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I don't recall when it was actually approved, but yeah, I would think they've had a little bit more than 6 months, over a year at least.
I think that if you at least had a good solid draft ready to go and you could take it to a lot of the regions are having their workshops in the next month or so, good time to take that and catch an auditor in the hallway and say, hey, what do you think? If it's not addressed on the main agenda, which I think a lot of them are probably going to at least speak to it a little bit. But so I guess with that kind of going into the other thing that I know I always get busy with this time of year, different events, whether it's the security ones, energy specific, or compliance, all three of them, this is a good time of year. We see a lot of those training and workshop events. I guess what one, can I give it to you guys each? What one are you most excited for going into the fall?
Well, I'll mention a couple, Nick. From a regional perspective, WEC's going to be down in San Diego in late October, early November. I think it's right around the first of the month. And I'm going to be teaching, you mentioned internal controls. So I'm doing a 1-day workshop on internal controls after that event, kind of in between the WEC event and our annual meeting. So looking forward to that, getting some feedback, interacting with industry on what's a very hot topic. As you mentioned, it's somewhat poorly defined, but that'll be interesting. And then the other big one is GridsetCon up in Canada. So not only is it back in Canada, get to do a little international travel, be up in Ontario in late October. I'm sure the weather will be absolutely beautiful.
No, it's in Quebec. We're not going to Ontario.
Quebec.
We're going.
Did I say Ontario? I apologize.
You did.
It isn't. It is in Quebec. I meant to
Brush
say
up on your
Quebec.
French.
That's quite the faux pas. See, throw a little. That's French, right? Faux pas is French.
They're going to meet you at the airport and turn you right back around.
Oh man, you got to edit that part out. So yeah, GridsetCon. We're going to be up in Quebec, back in Canada, in October, and this is the first in-person GridsetCon since before the pandemic. So I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of people I haven't seen in a long time. Hopefully I will recognize them and remember their name and not look like a total idiot, but that'll be great to get back up there.
Both good ones. Leonard, what do you plan to hit up this fall?
The WEC event in San Diego. Looking forward to attending that. Always good to get down to SoCal. Won't be making it up to GridSecCon, but hoping to attend GSX, Global Security Exchange, next month. Actually, it's already next month. Next week. In Dallas. So yeah, got to get those CPEs for my PSP cert. So, again, when I've attended that one in the past, it's been very interesting to, stay on the pulse of current events in the physical security space and hear what others are working on.
Excited for that one. Dallas usually puts on a pretty good show there. I know they're going to kick it off Sunday night at Gillies with Texas Night, which that alone is worth the price of admission. Although I don't think we're going to see our friend Darren Nielsen on the Mechanical Bull again this time, which another Archer After Dark story where I thought I was going to have to carry him to a chiropractor for a second time in my life. Looking at the agenda, one of the things I've had a criticism of ASIS for a while now is having multiple tracks that look identical. It looks like they've really addressed that this year and kind of steered into it with a pretty diverse set of sessions. If you are going and you want to hear me talk more about critical infrastructure, along with Carl Perman, who do a lot of work with, and then Scott Walker and Dirk Greenlaw, we're doing a panel Monday afternoon, I think 3:00 local, on critical infrastructure, security, and resilience. Unfortunately, a bunch of the other sessions I want to go to at the same time, and I haven't got that cloning tech down yet, but should be a good time. Another one that I was really hoping to get to, but just too much travel, so I'm not able to make it this year, is the ISC Squared, or ISC2. They just rebranded Congress. One of these days, I'm going to make it back to that one in person. But then on top of that, looking forward to GridSec, getting back up to Canada with, I know Steve's going to be there, Stacy, Mark. We'll have Roslyn come over from Ontario, so should have a pretty good contingent at that one. Looking forward to that. Be curious to see how many people we recognize from the old days there. And then I think the last real big event of the fall or the quarter there, I should get into Q4, is GridX. The every other year, the exercise. So GridX 7 this year in November. Not necessarily an in-person event, but definitely a big deal there and a good opportunity to get out and test a lot of those things before winter. Knock the rust off before the holiday season. I know that's when I was at Grant, that seemed to be when we always had the worst issues, was when everybody wanted to be not there. Any other thoughts on events or GridX or getting your own exercises rolling up for the shoulder season?
Well, thanks, Nick. You reminded me I need to test my generator, get ready for the winter season, storm season out here in rural Oregon, where the power is not quite as dependable as we'd like it to be, but that's just the fact of life living out here.
One last question before we split out, since I think you two are both going to be at the WEC event on Halloween. What costume are you going with this year?
I'm actually coming in a little late. I'm not going to be there on Halloween, so I bypassed the costume. But I figure I already look like I'm wearing a costume. So
costume to be determined. I've got quite a few off-the-shelf costumes I can pull out at a moment's notice, but working on a new one, so we'll see if it's ready to go.
Are you going to be there at WEC for Halloween, or are you staying home and going in a little bit late?
No, I'll be there that Monday, I believe.
All right. So if you want to figure out what Leonard's costume is, better be in San Diego. It will not disappoint. I'm quite certain of that. So, all right. Any other closing thoughts as we get ready to roll into pumpkin spice season, aka Q3?
AKA, are you ready for some football?
There we go.
Tell us how you really feel, Leonard.
Who dat?
I just want my summer back. Where'd my summer go?
Here. No, we're got the fantasy teams drafted. Got a new quarterback in New Orleans, so hoping for a good season.
All right. Well, thanks for joining, guys. As always, everyone take care, and we'll see you on the next Direct Connect. See y'all later.
Thank you.
See ya.
Stay up to date on all the videos we release here at Archer by clicking on the subscribe button. Click on the bell to be notified right away when we release new videos. If you know of a topic or someone you think we should talk to on DirectConnect, please let us know in the comments below.